Beneath the waves of our ancient oceans, a creature of unimaginable proportions stalked the depths. A predator so massive, so perfectly evolved for killing, that it reigned unchallenged for millions of years. This was Carcharocles Megalodon, the Megalodon, a shark so enormous that it could swallow a great white shark whole. With teeth the size of human hands and jaws powerful enough to crush bone like brittle glass, this monster represents the absolute pinnacle of predatory evolution. For nearly 20 million years, the Megalodon ruled Earth's seas as the undisputed apex predator, a living nightmare that turned the ocean into its personal hunting ground. Today, we embark on a journey through deep time to understand this magnificent beast, to explore the world it dominated, and to uncover the mysteries surrounding its existence and eventual extinction. This is the complete story of the largest predatory shark that ever lived. The story of the Megalodon begins in an ocean vastly different from the one we know today. During the early Miocene epoch, roughly 23 million years ago, Earth's climate was considerably warmer than the present day. The poles were free of ice, sea levels were higher, and tropical waters extended far beyond their current boundaries. In these warm, productive seas, life flourished in spectacular diversity. It was into this world that the Megalodon emerged, an evolutionary masterpiece that would come to define the very concept of oceanic supremacy. To truly appreciate the Megalodon, we must first understand its sheer physical presence. Modern science has pieced together a remarkably detailed picture of this ancient shark through careful study of its fossilized remains. Unlike most prehistoric creatures, sharks present a unique challenge to paleontologists. Their skeletons are composed primarily of cartilage rather than bone, a material that rarely fossilizes. What we have instead are the teeth, thousands upon thousands of teeth, scattered across ancient seabeds now raised above the waves. And what magnificent teeth they are. A single Megalodon tooth could measure over 7 inches in length, a triangular blade of serrated enamel designed for one purpose, to tear through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. These teeth were not merely large, they were perfectly engineered cutting tools. The serrations along their edges worked like microscopic saw blades, allowing the shark to slice through the tough hide and thick blubber of marine mammals with ease. Each tooth was anchored in powerful jaws, and like all sharks, the Megalodon continuously replaced its teeth throughout its lifetime. As front teeth wore down or broke off during attacks, new teeth moved forward from rows positioned behind them, ensuring the shark always maintained a full complement of razor-sharp weaponry. By studying these teeth and comparing them to those of modern great white sharks, scientists have developed mathematical models to estimate the Megalodon's total body size. The results are staggering. Conservative estimates place the average adult Megalodon at approximately 50 to 60 feet in length, though some individuals may have grown considerably larger. There are specimens suggesting lengths approaching 80 feet, though these extreme sizes remain subjects of scientific debate. To put this in perspective, a 50-foot Megalodon would be roughly 3 times the length of a large great white shark and several times its mass. Mass is where the Megalodon truly becomes incomprehensible. While length provides an impressive figure, weight tells the real story of this animal's physical presence. A mature Megalodon likely weighed between 50 and 70 tons, with the largest individuals possibly exceeding 100 tons. This is comparable to the weight of a modern sperm whale, one of the largest animals alive today. Imagine a shark with all the predatory instincts and hunting capabilities that implies, carrying the mass of a whale. This combination of size, power, and predatory specialization had never existed before and has never existed since. The Megalodon's body followed the classic shark design, refined over hundreds of millions of years of evolution. Its streamlined form minimized drag as it moved through the water, while powerful muscles driving a massive tail provided thrust. The body tapered from a thick, robust midsection to a pointed snout, creating the perfect hydrodynamic profile for an ambush predator. The tail, or caudal fin, was tall and crescent-shaped, similar to that of a great white but proportionally much larger. This tail design indicates the Megalodon was capable of sudden bursts of speed, essential for closing the final distance when attacking prey. Along the shark's flanks ran a series of sensory organs unique to sharks and their relatives. The lateral line system detected vibrations and pressure changes in the water, allowing the Megalodon to sense the movements of prey from considerable distances. This system was so sensitive it could detect the heartbeat of a seal from hundreds of feet away or feel the movements of a whale's flukes as it swam miles distant. Combined with an acute sense of smell that could detect blood diluted to 1 part per million, the Megalodon possessed a sensory array that made it nearly impossible to escape once it began a hunt. The head of the Megalodon was a marvel of evolutionary engineering. The snout was bluntly pointed, housing sensory pores called the ampullae of Lorenzini, which detected the electrical impulses generated by the muscles and nervous systems of other animals. No prey could hide from this detection system. Even a fish buried in sand betrayed its presence through the electrical signature of its beating heart. The eyes, while relatively small compared to the massive head, were positioned to provide binocular vision forward and to the sides, giving the shark excellent depth perception when targeting prey. But the most impressive feature was undoubtedly the jaws. Reconstructions based on vertebral columns and tooth positioning suggest the Megalodon could open its mouth to a gape of nearly 10 feet. The jaw structure allowed for incredible flexibility, with the upper jaw capable of extending forward and outward during a bite, maximizing the area of contact with prey. This protrusion mechanism, seen in modern sharks but taken to an extreme in the Megalodon, allowed the shark to take enormous bites, removing chunks of flesh weighing hundreds of pounds in a single attack. The force generated by these jaws remains a subject of intense scientific interest. Biomechanical analyses using computer models and comparisons with modern sharks suggest the Megalodon could deliver a bite force of approximately 24,000 to 40,000 pounds per square inch. This is several times the bite force of a Tyrannosaurus rex and by far the most powerful bite of any animal known to science. Such force could easily crush the skull of a large whale, shatter ribs, and sever the vertebral column of even the largest prey animals. When this crushing force combined with the slicing action of those serrated teeth, the result was a biological weapon system of unparalleled lethality. Recent research has revealed another fascinating aspect of Megalodon biology. The shark was likely warm-blooded, or more precisely, regionally endothermic. Most sharks are ectothermic, meaning their body temperature matches the surrounding water. However, some modern sharks, including the great white, maintain elevated temperatures in certain body regions through a system of heat exchangers in their circulatory system. Blood vessels carrying warm blood from working muscles pass close to vessels carrying cold blood from the gills, transferring heat and keeping the muscles, brain, and eyes warmer than the surrounding water. Evidence suggests the Megalodon possessed this ability to an even greater degree. By maintaining elevated muscle temperatures, the shark could sustain higher swimming speeds for longer periods. Warm muscles contract more efficiently and with greater power, providing enhanced performance. This adaptation would have allowed the Megalodon to hunt across a wide range of ocean temperatures, from tropical surface waters to the cooler depths, and possibly even into more temperate regions. It also required the shark to consume enormous quantities of food to fuel its metabolic furnace. A large Megalodon likely needed to consume at least 1 ton of food per day to maintain its body temperature and support its massive size. This brings us to the question of diet. What did such a massive predator eat and how did it hunt? The fossil record provides clear answers. Whale bones bearing Megalodon tooth marks have been discovered at sites around the world, showing distinctive patterns of attack. The shark targeted specific areas, the flippers, tail flukes, and the torso. This was not random feeding, but a sophisticated hunting strategy. By attacking the flippers and tail, the Megalodon immobilized its prey, preventing escape and minimizing the risk of injury from a struggling whale. Once the prey was disabled, the shark could feed at leisure, targeting the nutrient-rich blubber and internal organs. Some fossil bones show evidence of repeated bites, suggesting the Megalodon returned to feed on carcasses, or that it employed a bite-and-wait strategy, allowing injured prey to bleed out before consuming it. The primary prey species varied depending on location and time period. During the Miocene, the Megalodon fed on early baleen whales, toothed whales, seals, sea lions, sea turtles, and even other sharks. As baleen whales diversified and grew larger during the Pliocene, they became increasingly important in the Megalodon's diet. These whales, while enormous, were relatively slow swimmers and lacked the sophisticated echolocation abilities of modern baleen whales, making them vulnerable to ambush predators. Hunting grounds were carefully selected. Fossil evidence suggests Megalodon teeth are particularly abundant in areas that were once coastal nurseries, shallow bays, and upwelling zones where nutrient-rich waters supported high concentrations of prey. Young whales, lacking the size and experience of adults, would have been especially vulnerable in these areas. The Megalodon likely patrolled these regions, using its keen senses to detect the presence of potential meals. An attack would have been a terrifying spectacle. The shark approached from below and behind, using the darkness of the deep water as cover. Its coloration, likely dark on top and light on the bottom like modern sharks, provided camouflage through a principle called countershading. From above, the dark back blended with the deep water below. From below, the light belly merged with the bright surface. The prey, unaware of the approaching threat, continued its normal activities until the final moments. When the Megalodon struck, it did so with explosive speed and precision. The massive jaws opened wide, the upper jaw extended forward, and then those terrible teeth made contact. The force of impact alone could stun or injure prey, and the penetrating power of the teeth was absolute. Flesh tore, bones shattered, and blood clouded the water. If the prey was small enough, a single bite might be fatal. Larger prey received multiple attacks, each one calculated to inflict maximum damage while minimizing risk to the shark. After a successful kill, the Megalodon fed efficiently. The serrated teeth sliced through blubber and muscle, and the powerful jaws crushed bones to access marrow and internal organs. Nothing was wasted. A large whale carcass could sustain a Megalodon for weeks, and the shark's slow metabolism, typical of large marine predators, meant it could survive for extended periods between meals if necessary. But the Megalodon was not merely a eating machine. Like all apex predators, it played a crucial role in shaping the ecosystems it inhabited. By controlling populations of marine mammals, the Megalodon influenced the distribution and behavior of entire species. Whales likely avoided areas of known Megalodon activity, creating refugia where smaller marine life could flourish. The shark's feeding habits also provided nutrition for scavengers and smaller predators who fed on the remains of its kills. The life cycle of the Megalodon followed patterns similar to modern sharks, though on a vastly larger scale. Like their modern relatives, Megalodon were almost certainly ovoviviparous, meaning the young developed inside eggs that hatched within the mother's body, with the pups born live. Gestation periods likely lasted over a year, perhaps 18 months or more. The number of pups per litter remains unknown, but if modern large sharks are any guide, it was probably between 2 and 10. Megalodon pups were born at a size that seems impossible by modern standards. Estimates suggest newborn Megalodon measured between 6 and 10 feet in length, already larger than many adult sharks swimming in today's oceans. Even at this size, the young sharks were vulnerable. Adult Megalodon, other large sharks, and possibly even large predatory whales posed threats to juveniles. To survive, young Megalodon required safe areas where they could grow and develop hunting skills without facing predation from their own kind or other large predators. Fossil evidence points to the existence of Megalodon nurseries, shallow coastal areas where concentrations of juvenile teeth have been found. These nurseries likely offered several advantages. The shallow water excluded the largest predators who required deeper water to maneuver. The warm temperatures promoted rapid growth, and the abundance of smaller prey, fish, rays, small sharks, and young marine mammals provided ample food for developing juveniles. Young Megalodon grew rapidly, adding several feet per year during their early life. This fast growth was essential for survival. The larger a young shark became, the fewer predators could threaten it. By the time a juvenile reached 20 feet in length, probably around 5 to 7 years of age, it had outgrown most threats and could begin venturing into deeper waters to hunt larger prey. Sexual maturity came late, as with all large sharks. A Megalodon probably didn't reach reproductive maturity until it was at least 25 years old, possibly older. At this point, the shark would have been 30 to 40 feet long, a formidable predator in its own right, though still smaller than the true giants of the species. Maximum lifespan remains speculative, but growth ring analysis of vertebrae from related species suggests that Megalodon could have lived for 100 years or more. The largest individuals, the true monarchs of the ocean, were likely ancient animals that had survived decades of hunting, migration, and competition. Reproduction was probably seasonal and tied to environmental conditions. Pregnant females migrated to nursery areas to give birth, much as modern sharks do. After birth, the mother departed, providing no parental care. The pups were on their own from the moment they entered the world, armed with instinct and already formidable physical capabilities. Those that survived the dangerous juvenile years would go on to become apex predators, those that didn't provided food for the complex web of life that characterized ancient oceans. The geographic range of the Megalodon was truly global. Fossils have been discovered on every continent except Antarctica, though given the vastly different climate of the Miocene and Pliocene, it's possible the shark ranged into waters surrounding even that southern landmass. The distribution pattern tells us much about the shark's habitat preferences and the environmental conditions it required. Megalodon teeth are most common in deposits that represent warm, shallow seas, suggesting the shark preferred tropical and subtropical waters. However, finds from higher latitudes indicate the species could tolerate cooler temperatures, especially given its likely warm-blooded physiology. The shark probably undertook seasonal migrations, following the movements of prey species and seeking optimal temperatures for different life stages. Coastal areas were clearly important. The abundance of fossils in what were once continental shelf environments shows that Megalodon frequently hunted in relatively shallow water. These regions offered high productivity, supporting large populations of the marine mammals that made up the shark's primary diet, but the Megalodon was also capable of ranging into open ocean environments. Teeth have been found in deposits representing deep water settings, suggesting the shark crossed oceanic basins and possibly dove to considerable depths. The ability to dive deep would have provided several advantages. Deeper water offered refuge from surface storms and access to different prey populations. Some whales feed at depth, and seals dive hundreds of feet to hunt fish and squid. A megalodon capable of following prey into the depths would have had access to food sources unavailable to surface-restricted predators. The shark's physiology, with its warm muscles and efficient cardiovascular system, would have supported deep diving, though probably not to the extreme depths achieved by modern sperm whales. Migration routes likely connected feeding grounds, breeding areas, and nurseries. Young sharks remained in protected coastal waters. Subadults ranged more widely, developing hunting skills and building the body mass necessary for reproduction. Adults traveled vast distances, perhaps thousands of miles, moving between seasonal feeding areas and nursery sites. This pattern of life stage-specific habitat use is common among modern sharks and would have been adaptive for the megalodon as well. The ocean during the megalodon's reign was a crowded place, full of competitors and potential threats. While the megalodon stood at the apex of the food chain, it did not hunt in isolation. Other large predators shared its domain, and understanding these relationships provides insight into ancient marine ecosystems. Among the most significant competitors were other sharks. The Miocene and Pliocene oceans hosted a diversity of shark species, many quite large by modern standards. The great white shark, Carcharocles, evolved during the megalodon's tenure, probably during the Middle Miocene. Early great whites were larger than their modern descendants, with some individuals reaching lengths of 20 feet or more. While far smaller than the megalodon, great whites were efficient hunters of marine mammals, and the two species likely competed for similar prey. This competition may have driven ecological separation. Great whites, being smaller and more agile, could hunt in shallower water and pursue faster prey. The megalodon, with its tremendous size and power, specialized in larger prey that great whites couldn't efficiently tackle. This partitioning allowed both species to coexist, each occupying a slightly different ecological niche. Other large sharks of the era included various species of makos, swift pelagic predators, large hammerheads which hunted in coastal waters, and numerous species of now extinct sharks whose ecological roles we can only infer from fragmentary remains. Each contributed to a complex predatory guild that exerted top-down pressure on marine mammal populations. Beyond sharks, the megalodon shared the seas with large predatory whales. The raptorial sperm whales, members of the extinct family Physteroidea, were formidable hunters equipped with large teeth and the intelligence characteristic of cetaceans. These whales hunted large prey, including other whales, and could reach lengths of 40 feet or more. Whether Megalodon and these predatory whales competed or avoided each other remains unclear, but encounters between them must have been spectacular events. The famous prehistoric whale Livyatan melvillae, discovered in Peru and named after the biblical Leviathan and Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, lived during the Middle Miocene and shared habitat with the Megalodon. Livyatan was a macroraptorial sperm whale measuring up to 57 feet in length, with the largest functional teeth ever discovered in any animal, exceeding 1 foot in length. Unlike modern sperm whales, which have teeth only in the lower jaw and feed primarily on squid, Livyatan had massive teeth in both upper and lower jaws, perfect for attacking large prey. The question of whether Megalodon and Livyatan actively competed or hunted each other has fascinated paleontologists and the public alike. Both were apex predators of similar size, both hunted large marine mammals, and both left evidence of their presence in the same fossil deposits. Direct evidence of interaction between the two species is lacking, but logic suggests they would have encountered each other and possibly competed for resources. In such encounters, several factors would have determined the outcome. The Megalodon's advantages included its teeth, which were specifically designed for cutting and slicing, and its bite force, which exceeded anything Livyatan could produce. The whale's advantages included intelligence, potentially complex social behavior if Leviathan hunted in groups like some modern whales, and the ability to echolocate, providing superior sensory capabilities in murky water or at depth. Most likely, both predators avoided direct confrontation when possible. The risk of injury in a fight between such massive animals would have been significant, and a wounded apex predator often becomes a dead one. They probably partitioned resources by targeting different size classes of prey, hunting in different areas, or being active at different times. Where their ranges overlapped extensively, competition would have been most intense, potentially limiting populations of both species. The fossil record also reveals evidence of other impressive marine predators from earlier periods, though these didn't directly interact with the Megalodon due to temporal separation. Understanding these ancient hunters provides context for the Megalodon's place in the long history of marine predation. Among the most fascinating were the marine reptiles of the Mesozoic era. Though extinct for millions of years before the Megalodon evolved, these creatures represent previous iterations of oceanic apex predators and demonstrate the various solutions evolution has found to the challenge of life as a marine carnivore. The mosasaurs, which dominated late Cretaceous seas before the mass extinction that ended the age of dinosaurs, were formidable predators. The largest, such as Mosasaurus hoffmanni, reached lengths of 50 feet or more. These were not dinosaurs but rather enormous marine lizards, relatives of modern monitor lizards and snakes that had fully adapted to oceanic life. They possessed powerful jaws filled with sharp teeth, flexible skulls that allowed them to swallow large prey, and streamlined bodies driven by powerful tails. Mosasaurs were the apex predators of their time, feeding on fish, sea turtles, smaller mosasaurs, and even sharks. Their teeth show adaptations for different feeding strategies. Some species had sharp, recurved teeth for gripping slippery fish, while others had blunt, crushing teeth for breaking shells and bones. The mosasaur's success demonstrates that different evolutionary lineages can converge on similar solutions to the challenges of marine predation, a principle called convergent evolution that appears repeatedly in the history of life. Even more alien in appearance were the pliosaurs, marine reptiles that hunted Jurassic and Cretaceous seas. These were members of the plesiosaur group, but unlike their long-necked relatives, pliosaurs had short necks, massive heads, and incredibly powerful jaws. The largest known pliosaur specimens suggest animals approaching 40 feet in length, with skulls measuring over 8 feet long. The bite force of these creatures was tremendous, possibly rivaling that of the Megalodon, and their teeth were designed for puncturing and gripping rather than slicing. Pliosaurs likely hunted by ambush, using their 4 large flippers to execute rapid bursts of speed. Unlike sharks, which swim by undulating their bodies, pliosaurs flew through the water using their flippers like wings, a method of propulsion that provides excellent maneuverability. They preyed on large fish, sharks, marine reptiles, and probably anything else they could catch. Their dominance of Mesozoic oceans parallels the Megalodon's later supremacy, another example of evolution repeatedly producing massive apex predators to fill the top of marine food webs. The ichthyosaurs, yet another group of marine reptiles, included species that rivaled modern whales in size. These creatures looked remarkably like dolphins or sharks, despite being reptiles more closely related to lizards. This is a stunning example of convergent evolution. Sharks, ichthyosaurs, dolphins, and whales all evolved similar body shapes because that form is hydrodynamically optimal for fast swimming in open water. The largest ichthyosaurs, such as Shawnosaurus and the recently described Himalayasaurus, may have reached lengths of 65 feet or more, though these giants were filter feeders rather than active predators. However, earlier ichthyosaurs were indeed predatory and some were formidable hunters. Temnodontosaurus, which lived during the early Jurassic, reached lengths of 40 feet and possessed the largest eyes of any known animal, measuring up to 10 inches in diameter. These enormous eyes allowed hunting in deep, dark waters where most other predators couldn't operate effectively. The teeth of Temnodontosaurus were large and sharp, perfect for grasping squid and fish in the abyss. Even before the age of reptiles, Earth's oceans hosted remarkable predators. During the Devonian period, often called the Age of Fishes, the seas were ruled by armored fish called placoderms. The most famous of these was Dunkleosteus, a genus that included some of the largest predatory fish to ever live. Dunkleosteus was an extraordinary creature, measuring up to 33 feet in length and weighing several tons. Instead of teeth, it possessed blade-like bony plates that formed a sharp, self-sharpening beak. The jaw mechanics of Dunkleosteus were remarkable. It could open its mouth in 50 milliseconds, creating a powerful suction that pulled prey into those deadly plates. The bite force, estimated at 8,000 pounds per square inch, was enough to slice through heavily armored prey, including other placoderms. The head and anterior portion of Dunkleosteus's body were encased in thick armor plating, providing protection from the bites of other predators and possibly from prey items fighting back. This armor was jointed, allowing the head to move and the jaws to open, but providing formidable defense. In its time, Dunkleosteus was an apex predator without equal, ruling the Devonian seas for millions of years. Comparing Dunkleosteus to the Megalodon reveals interesting contrasts. The Megalodon was larger, with greater bite force and more sophisticated sensory systems. Its teeth were replaceable, while Dunkleosteus's bony plates, if damaged, would heal but not regenerate. The Megalodon's cartilaginous skeleton provided flexibility and reduced weight, while Dunkleosteus carried heavy armor that limited speed and agility. In a hypothetical encounter, the Megalodon's advantages in size, bite force, and maneuverability would likely prove decisive, though Dunkleosteus's armor might protect it from immediate fatal injury. Such comparisons, while speculative and impossible to test, highlight the different solutions evolution has produced for the challenge of being a large marine predator. Armor versus speed, bone versus cartilage, teeth versus plates. Each approach has advantages and disadvantages shaped by the specific environmental and ecological context in which each animal lived. Moving even further back in time reveals creatures so bizarre they challenge our understanding of what an animal can be. During the Cambrian period, more than 500 million years ago, life in Earth's oceans was experimenting with body plans and strategies that have never been seen since. This was the Cambrian explosion, a relatively brief period in geological time during which most major animal groups first appeared in the fossil record. Among the strangest Cambrian predators was Anomalocaris, whose name means abnormal shrimp. When first discovered, Anomalocaris was so unlike anything living that paleontologists initially described different parts of its body as separate organisms. The circular mouth was thought to be a jellyfish, the feeding appendages were classified as shrimp, and the body was labeled as a sea cucumber. Only later did scientists realize these were all parts of a single, very strange animal. Anomalocaris reached lengths of up to 3 feet, making it a giant by Cambrian standards when most animals were measured in millimeters. It had a segmented body with lateral lobes used for swimming, giving it an undulating motion through the water. The head bore a pair of large compound eyes, among the most sophisticated visual organs of the period, providing acute vision to track prey. Most distinctive were the 2 large appendages that extended from the front of the head, lined with spines and used to grasp prey and bring it to the mouth. The mouth itself was unlike anything in modern animals, a circular structure composed of plates that constricted like a camera shutter, lined with teeth-like projections. This apparatus could grasp and crush smaller animals, and fossil evidence shows Anomalocaris preyed on trilobites and other arthropods. Bite marks matching the Anomalocaris mouth have been found on trilobite fossils, providing direct evidence of predation. In the context of its time, Anomalocaris was an apex predator, the largest and most sophisticated hunter in Cambrian seas. It represents an early experiment in large body size and active predation, a template that would be refined and repeated throughout the history of life. The evolutionary lineage leading from Anomalocaris to modern arthropods demonstrates how ancient body plans can give rise to the incredible diversity of life we see today. Equally strange was Apobinia, another Cambrian animal that defies easy classification. Apobinia was smaller than Anomalocaris, measuring only about 3 inches in length, but its morphology was extraordinary. It possessed 5 eyes, a segmented body, and most remarkably, a long flexible proboscis extending from the front of its head, tipped with a grasping claw. This proboscis was likely used to capture small prey from the seafloor or from the water column, bringing food to the mouth located beneath the head. The 5 eyes provided near panoramic vision, allowing Apobinia to track prey and watch for predators simultaneously. The body had lateral lobes similar to those of Anomalocaris, suggesting a relationship between the 2 creatures, though their exact place in the tree of life remains debated. When Apobinia was first presented to the scientific community in the 1970s, the audience reportedly burst into laughter, so bizarre was its appearance. Yet this creature and others like it demonstrate the remarkable diversity of animal body plans that evolved during the Cambrian. Many of these experiments in anatomy proved unsuccessful and left no descendants, while others gave rise to the major animal groups alive today. Understanding these ancient creatures helps us appreciate the long and complex history of life on Earth. Another enigmatic creature from a later period is the Tully monster, Tullimonstrum gregarium, known from fossils found in Illinois. This animal lived during the Carboniferous period, about 300 million years ago, and despite thousands of specimens being discovered, scientists still debate what kind of animal it was. The Tully monster had an elongated, soft-bodied form measuring up to 14 inches in length. At the front was a long proboscis, similar to Opibinia's but proportionally longer, tipped with a claw-like structure housing tiny teeth. The eyes were positioned on a bar-like structure extending from the sides of the body, giving the creature an appearance unlike any modern animal. A fin at the rear of the body suggests it was a swimmer, though probably not a particularly fast one. The internal anatomy of the Tully monster, revealed through sophisticated imaging of fossils, shows structures interpreted as gills, a notochord, a flexible rod of tissue found in chordates, animals with backbones and their relatives, and possibly a cartilaginous skeleton. If these interpretations are correct, the Tully monster may have been an early vertebrate or a close relative of vertebrates, despite its bizarre appearance. Other researchers suggest it was more closely related to invertebrates such as mollusks or worms. The debate continues, demonstrating that even with thousands of specimens, the fossil record can still hold mysteries. These ancient and bizarre creatures remind us that the history of life on Earth is filled with experiments, both successful and failed. The body plans we see in modern animals represent only a small fraction of the diversity that has existed over the past 500 million years. Many perfectly viable and successful designs were eliminated by extinction events, changes in environmental conditions, or competition for more efficient forms. The Megalodon itself, as we shall see, would eventually fall victim to this inexorable process. But before we explore the Megalodon's extinction, we must consider the full diversity of life that shared its world. The Miocene and Pliocene oceans were far richer than today's seas in many respects. Marine mammal diversity was particularly impressive, with numerous species of whales, dolphins, seals, and sea cows filling niches from the surface to the deep sea, from tropical waters to polar regions. Baleen whales, the giants that form the bulk of large whale species today, underwent dramatic diversification during the Megalodon's reign. Early baleen whales were smaller than their modern descendants and less sophisticated in their filtering mechanisms. As the ocean's productivity increased due to changes in circulation patterns and nutrient distribution, populations of small fish and krill exploded, providing abundant food for filter feeders. Baleen whales evolved larger body sizes and more efficient filtering systems to exploit this resource. This created an interesting dynamic with the Megalodon. As baleen whales grew larger, they became more profitable prey for a predator capable of killing them, but they also became more difficult and dangerous to attack. A 40-foot whale represents an enormous amount of food, but it's also a powerful animal capable of inflicting serious injury on an attacker. The Megalodon's evolution toward gigantic size may have been driven in part by an evolutionary arms race with increasingly large prey. Toothed whales also diversified extensively. Early sperm whales, as mentioned, included raptorial forms that hunted large prey. Dolphins, porpoises, and beaked whales filled various ecological roles, from coastal fish eaters to deep-diving squid hunters. Some of these species were much larger than their modern relatives, and many went extinct during the same environmental changes that affected the Megalodon. Seals, sea lions, and walruses, collectively known as pinnipeds, were relative newcomers to the oceans during the Megalodon's era. These marine mammals evolved from terrestrial ancestors during the late Oligocene and early Miocene, adapting to life in the sea with remarkable success. By the Middle Miocene, numerous pinniped species hunted fish and invertebrates in coastal waters around the world. For the Megalodon, pinnipeds represented easy prey, air-breathing mammals that had to return to the surface regularly, often concentrated in large colonies at breeding sites. Sea cows, or sirenians, were also more diverse than today. Modern sea cows include only manatees and the dugong, all of which are strictly vegetarian. Their ancient relatives included larger species and, intriguingly, at least one carnivorous form. Desmostylians, an extinct group of marine mammals possibly related to sirenians, included species that may have fed on shellfish and other hard-shelled invertebrates. These creatures, while not primary prey for the Megalodon, add to the picture of rich and complex marine ecosystems. The seas were also home to enormous sea turtles, far larger than any alive today. Archelon, while Cretaceous in age and thus not contemporary with the Megalodon, demonstrates that sea turtles have repeatedly evolved gigantic forms. Miocene and Pliocene sea turtles, while not as large as Archelon, were still formidable animals, and their shells provided some protection against predation, though probably not enough to deter a determined Megalodon. Bony fish reached impressive sizes as well. Relatives of modern tuna, marlin, and swordfish hunted the open ocean, some species reaching lengths of 10 feet or more. Closer to shore, large groupers, snappers, and other reef-associated fish created complex food webs. In deeper waters, fish adapted to the low light and high pressure developed bizarre forms and hunting strategies. Invertebrate diversity was equally impressive. Cephalopods, the group including octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish, filled every marine habitat from tide pools to the deep sea. Some squid species reached enormous sizes, as they do today, providing food for deep-diving whales and other predators. The fossil record of soft-bodied invertebrates is poor, but occasional exceptional preservation provides glimpses of this hidden diversity. The ocean floor hosted vast forests of kelp and seagrass, providing habitat and food for countless species. These plant communities were particularly important as nurseries for juvenile fish and invertebrates, and they played crucial roles in coastal food webs. The Megalodon, while primarily a pelagic hunter, likely visited these coastal areas regularly, particularly when targeting pinnipeds and other prey that utilized shallow water habitats. Coral reefs, though different in composition from modern reefs, provided biodiversity hotspots in tropical seas. The corals themselves were different species from most modern reef builders, but they served similar ecological functions, creating complex three-dimensional structures that housed thousands of species. These reefs supported fish populations that in turn supported larger predators, creating food webs that stretched from microscopic plankton to the Megalodon itself. Understanding this complex web of life is essential for understanding the Megalodon's eventual extinction. The shark did not exist in isolation. It was part of an interconnected ecosystem where changes in one component affected all others. When environmental conditions began to shift during the late Pliocene, the effects rippled through entire ocean systems, ultimately resulting in one of the most significant turnovers in marine life in the past 20 million years. The seeds of the Megalodon's extinction were sown by changes in Earth's climate and ocean circulation patterns. During the Middle and Late Miocene, global temperatures began a long-term cooling trend that would eventually lead to the ice ages of the Pleistocene. The causes were complex and interrelated. The uplift of major mountain ranges, changes in ocean currents, variations in Earth's orbit and the tilt of its axis, and possibly changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels all contributed. As temperatures cooled, the distribution of warm and cold water in the oceans shifted. The temperature gradient between the equator and the poles increased, driving stronger currents and more vigorous mixing of ocean layers. Nutrient distribution changed, affecting the productivity of different regions. Some areas became more productive, supporting larger populations of plankton and the animals that fed on them. Other areas became less productive, essentially turning into marine deserts. These changes had profound effects on marine mammals. Baleen whales, which feed on plankton and small fish, were affected by shifts in the distribution of their prey. As cold, nutrient-rich water became more common at high latitudes, baleen whales increasingly concentrated their feeding in polar and subpolar regions, undertaking long migrations between feeding and breeding areas. This behavioral shift may have removed them from areas where the Megalodon traditionally hunted, reducing food availability for the shark. At the same time, the regions where the Megalodon likely raised its young were being affected. Coastal nursery areas require warm, shallow water with high productivity. As sea levels fluctuated in response to the growing and melting of ice sheets, the area of suitable coastal habitat expanded and contracted. During periods of lower sea level, the width of continental shelves decreased, reducing the area available for nurseries. The Megalodon population depended on these specific habitats for reproduction. Their reduction would have constrained population growth and potentially caused declines. The closing of seaways also affected ocean circulation. The formation of the Isthmus of Panama, which connected North and South America and closed the gap between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, occurred during the Pliocene. This event, known as the Great American Interchange, had profound effects on both terrestrial and marine life. Ocean currents that previously flowed between the Atlantic and Pacific were cut off, forcing reorganization of global circulation patterns. The Gulf Stream, which carries warm water northward along the eastern coast of North America, strengthened as a result of the closure. In the Pacific, circulation patterns changed, affecting water temperature and nutrient distribution. For the Megalodon, these changes may have fragmented populations. If Atlantic and Pacific populations had previously mixed through the Central American Seaway, its closure would have separated them, reducing genetic diversity and the ability of populations in one region to be supported by immigration from another. Fragmented populations are more vulnerable to extinction because local declines cannot be offset by individuals moving in from elsewhere. Changes in prey communities also played a role. The evolution of faster, more agile whales may have made hunting more difficult for the Megalodon. Modern baleen whales, despite their size, are surprisingly fast swimmers when necessary and can execute evasive maneuvers. If Pliocene whales were developing these capabilities, the energy expenditure required for a successful hunt would have increased. An adult Megalodon already needed to consume enormous quantities of food. If each hunt became more difficult, the shark would have needed to hunt more frequently or target easier prey. Competition with other predators may have intensified. The killer whale, Orcinus orca, evolved during the Pliocene and quickly became one of the ocean's top predators. Modern killer whales hunt in coordinated packs, using sophisticated communication and strategy to take down prey as large as blue whales. If Pliocene killer whales possessed even a fraction of their modern descendants' intelligence and social complexity, they would have been formidable competitors for the Megalodon. Groups of killer whales could potentially mob a Megalodon, harassing it and driving it away from prey. While a Megalodon could certainly kill a single killer whale, a coordinated group would be far more dangerous. Great white sharks, which had been increasing in size and sophistication throughout the Miocene and Pliocene, were also competitors. While much smaller than the Megalodon, great whites were faster and more agile, allowing them to hunt prey the Megalodon might miss. In an environment where prey was becoming scarcer or more difficult to catch, this competition would have become increasingly significant. This is part of the narration for part 1 of the documentary, which required 15,000 words. The narration would continue from this point in the second half. The competitive pressure from great white sharks represents a fascinating aspect of the Megalodon's decline. In ecology, there exists a principle called competitive exclusion, which states that two species competing for identical resources cannot coexist indefinitely. One will inevitably outcompete the other, leading to the extinction or evolutionary divergence of the less competitive species. While the Megalodon and great white shark didn't occupy completely identical niches, they overlapped significantly in their prey preferences and habitat use. The great white's advantages in this competition were subtle but significant. Their smaller size meant lower food requirements. A great white needed perhaps 50 to 100 pounds of food per day, compared to the Megalodon's requirement of a ton or more. In an environment where prey was becoming scarcer, this difference would have been critical. The great white could sustain itself on smaller prey items that would barely register as a meal for the massive Megalodon. A seal that provided several days of nutrition for a great white might not even be worth the energy expenditure for a Megalodon to pursue. Furthermore, the great white's hunting strategy was more flexible. Modern great whites employ a diverse array of hunting techniques depending on prey type, location, and environmental conditions. They can hunt solitarily or in loose aggregations, they can ambush from below or chase down prey in open water, and they can target prey ranging from fish to seals to whale carcasses. This behavioral flexibility allowed them to adapt to changing conditions more readily than the Megalodon, which was essentially committed to hunting large prey due to its enormous size and metabolic demands. The great white's reproductive strategy may also have been advantageous. Smaller animals generally reach reproductive maturity faster than large ones, allowing for quicker population recovery after declines and more rapid adaptation to environmental change. A great white could produce offspring at perhaps 10 years of age, while a Megalodon required 25 years or more. In a rapidly changing environment, the ability to produce new generations quickly provides a significant advantage. However, we must be cautious about overemphasizing competition as the sole cause of the Megalodon's extinction. Many large predators have coexisted throughout history despite overlapping niches. Modern oceans support multiple species of large predatory sharks, and during the Mesozoic, numerous species of large marine reptiles hunted the same seas without driving each other to extinction. Competition certainly played a role in the Megalodon's decline, but it was likely one factor among many, all operating simultaneously to stress the species beyond its capacity to adapt. Another crucial factor was the transformation of ocean chemistry and temperature. As the Pliocene progressed into the Pleistocene, ocean temperatures continued to decline. Tropical and subtropical waters contracted toward the equator, replaced by temperate and even cold water at higher latitudes. For a warm-blooded predator like the Megalodon, maintaining body temperature in cold water requires enormous energy expenditure. The shark's massive size helped retain heat, but it also increased absolute heat loss due to the large surface area. The Megalodon's thermal biology created a vulnerability. In warm water, the shark's warm-blooded physiology was an advantage, allowing sustained high-speed swimming and efficient muscle function. But in cooling oceans, it became a liability. The shark had to consume more food just to maintain body temperature at precisely the time when food was becoming scarcer and harder to catch. This created a vicious cycle. The shark needed more energy to function, but acquiring that energy became progressively more difficult. Ocean chemistry also changed in ways that affected the entire marine ecosystem. The growth of ice sheets at the poles locked up enormous quantities of water, changing ocean salinity. Circulation patterns shifted, affecting the distribution of nutrients and oxygen. Areas that had been highly productive became less so, while other regions became more productive. These changes didn't happen uniformly or gradually. Climate change during this period included rapid fluctuations, with temperatures and sea levels shifting dramatically over relatively short timescales. For a large, long-lived species like the Megalodon, rapid environmental change is particularly challenging. An individual Megalodon might have lived for a century, during which time the oceans could have changed dramatically. Habitats that were suitable at the beginning of a shark's life might have become unsuitable by the time it reached reproductive maturity. Migration routes between feeding and breeding areas might have become untenable due to temperature changes or the disappearance of suitable stopover habitats. The fossil record provides evidence of these changes in the form of shifting species distributions. Fossils of tropical species appear in high-latitude deposits from the Miocene, showing that warm water species ranged far from the equator. By the Pliocene, these same species are found only at lower latitudes, pushed toward the equator by cooling temperatures. The Megalodon teeth follow this pattern, becoming progressively rarer at high latitudes and eventually disappearing from those regions altogether. The timing of the Megalodon's extinction has been debated and refined as new fossil discoveries and improved dating techniques become available. For many years, the accepted extinction date was approximately 1.5 million years ago, during the early Pleistocene. However, more recent analyses suggest the extinction occurred earlier, perhaps 2.6 million years ago at the Pliocene-Pleistocene boundary, or possibly even earlier during the late Pliocene. Determining precise extinction dates for any species is challenging. The absence of fossils doesn't necessarily mean a species was absent. It might simply mean that conditions weren't suitable for fossilization or that we haven't yet found the fossils. To establish an extinction date with confidence, paleontologists must examine extensive fossil records from multiple locations, apply sophisticated statistical analyses to account for gaps in the record, and use multiple dating techniques to establish chronologies. Recent studies using these advanced methods suggest that the Megalodon's extinction was not a sudden event, but rather a gradual decline that played out over hundreds of thousands of years. The species range contracted, populations became smaller and more fragmented, and eventually the remaining populations dwindled to extinction. This pattern is common for large predators facing environmental change. They don't typically disappear all at once, but rather fade away as conditions become progressively less favorable. The final populations may have persisted in refugia, areas where conditions remained suitable even as the broader environment changed. These could have been regions where warm water persisted, where prey populations remained abundant, or where nursery areas continued to function. Identifying these potential refugia is an active area of research, with scientists examining the geographic and temporal distribution of the youngest Megalodon fossils to pinpoint where and when the last individuals lived. One intriguing hypothesis suggests that changes to nursery habitats delivered the final blow to the Megalodon. If the species depended on specific types of coastal environments for reproduction, and those environments disappeared or became unsuitable, the shark would have been unable to maintain its population even if adult habitat remained available. This phenomenon, known as a reproductive bottleneck, has driven numerous species to extinction throughout history. The evidence for this hypothesis comes from the distribution of juvenile Megalodon teeth. In older deposits, juvenile teeth are common in certain areas, indicating established nurseries. In younger deposits, juvenile teeth become progressively rarer, suggesting nursery habitat was disappearing. If young sharks couldn't survive to adulthood in sufficient numbers, the population would inevitably decline regardless of how many adults survived. Sea level change likely played a direct role in nursery loss. During periods of lower sea level, continental shelves were exposed, transforming shallow marine environments into terrestrial habitats. The areas that had served as protected nurseries became dry land, eliminating them as viable habitat. While sea level has fluctuated throughout Earth's history, the particular combination of cooling temperatures and falling sea level during the Pliocene may have been especially devastating for species dependent on warm, shallow water nurseries. The disappearance of the megalodon from the fossil record marks one of the most significant ecological transitions in recent marine history. The loss of the largest apex predator the oceans had ever known must have had cascading effects throughout marine ecosystems. Prey species that had been controlled by megalodon predation would have experienced population releases. Competing predators would have had access to resources previously monopolized by the megalodon. Scavenger populations, which had fed on the remains of megalodon kills, would have needed to find alternative food sources. These cascading effects demonstrate the principle of trophic cascades, where changes at one level of a food web affect multiple other levels. The removal of an apex predator typically allows prey populations to increase, which in turn affects the prey's food sources, which affects their prey, and so on down the food chain. In modern ecosystems, the removal of apex predators has been shown to have dramatic and often unexpected consequences, restructuring entire ecological communities. In the case of the megalodon, we can speculate about some of these effects. Whale populations, freed from predation pressure by the largest shark predator, may have been able to grow larger. This could explain the evolution of the truly gigantic baleen whales that appeared after the megalodon's extinction. Modern blue whales, fin whales, and bowhead whales reach sizes that approach or exceed the largest estimates for the megalodon itself. Perhaps these sizes were only achievable once the threat of megalodon predation disappeared. Great white sharks and killer whales, the primary large predators that remained after the megalodon's extinction, expanded into niches previously occupied by their massive competitor. Modern great whites are found worldwide in temperate and tropical seas, hunting marine mammals with efficiency and sophistication. Killer whales have diversified into multiple ecotypes, each specialized for hunting different prey, from fish to seals to large whales. Both species may owe part of their success to the absence of competition from the megalodon. The megalodon's extinction also raises questions about the permanence of ecological roles. For nearly 20 million years, the role of largest apex predator in marine ecosystems was filled by this massive shark. After its extinction, no species has evolved to fill precisely the same role. The great white shark is the largest predatory shark alive today, but at maximum sizes around 20 feet and 2 tons, it's a fraction of the megalodon's size. Killer whales approach the megalodon's size, with large males reaching 30 feet and 6 tons, but they're social hunters rather than solitary predators, representing a different ecological strategy. This raises the question, why hasn't another massive solitary predator evolved to fill the megalodon's niche? Several factors may explain this. First, the environmental conditions that favored the megalodon's gigantic size may no longer exist. The abundance of large, slow-moving prey that characterized the Miocene and Pliocene has been replaced by faster, more agile prey that's more efficiently hunted by smaller, quicker predators or by cooperative groups. Second, the evolution of extremely large size takes considerable time, and the environmental instability of the Pleistocene and Holocene may not have provided sufficient stable conditions for such evolution to occur. Finally, killer whales may be so efficient at their role as apex predators that they prevent competitors from evolving, occupying niches that might otherwise have been filled by other species. Yet despite the megalodon's extinction millions of years ago, the species continues to capture human imagination in remarkable ways. Reports of megalodon sightings persist, fueled by misidentifications, hoaxes, and the understandable desire to believe that such a magnificent creature might still lurk in unexplored ocean depths. These claims have been thoroughly investigated and consistently debunked, but their persistence reveals something important about our relationship with the natural world and our fascination with apex predators. The ocean's vastness does leave room for mystery. We've explored less than 5% of the ocean floor in detail, and new species are discovered regularly. The deep sea in particular remains largely unknown, with expeditions to the abyss revealing creatures as strange as any from the fossil record. This unknown territory fuels speculation about what might remain undiscovered. However, several factors make Megalodon survival essentially impossible. First, the Megalodon was not a deep-sea shark. All evidence suggests it hunted in surface and mid-water environments where its primary prey lived. A population of 60-foot sharks hunting whales and seals in surface waters could not possibly remain undetected in the modern era of satellite monitoring, extensive shipping, and recreational ocean use. We would have found bodies either from natural deaths or from interactions with human activities. We would have found fresh teeth washing ashore. We would have documented attacks on prey species. Second, the Megalodon's food requirements mean a viable breeding population would need to consume enormous quantities of prey. A single Megalodon needed roughly a ton of food daily. A breeding population of even a few hundred individuals would need to kill thousands of tons of prey annually. This level of predation would leave obvious signs in marine mammal populations, including scarring patterns, population dynamics, and behavioral adaptations. We see none of these signs. Third, the environmental conditions that supported the Megalodon no longer exist in the same configuration. The warm, shallow seas that served as nurseries have changed dramatically. The prey communities have evolved and adapted. The ocean chemistry and temperature have shifted. A species cannot persist unchanged for millions of years in a changing environment. Either it adapts and evolves into something different, or it goes extinct. There's no mechanism by which a breeding population of Megalodon could have remained frozen in evolutionary time while everything around them changed. Nevertheless, the desire to believe in the Megalodon's survival reflects something deeper than simple misunderstanding of biology and ecology. It represents our need for wildness, for the unknown, for the possibility that the world still contains wonders beyond our comprehension. In an era where wilderness is disappearing and species are going extinct at alarming rates, the idea that the ultimate apex predator might still exist provides a kind of hope, even as it inspires fear. This same fascination has made the Megalodon a popular subject in media and entertainment. Documentaries, movies, books, and video games have featured the shark, often taking considerable liberties with scientific accuracy in favor of dramatic effect. These portrayals typically exaggerate the shark's size, ferocity, and willingness to attack humans, creating a monster that bears only superficial resemblance to the real animal. The real Megalodon, while certainly formidable, was a product of evolution, shaped by natural selection to fill a specific ecological role. It wasn't a monster in any meaningful sense. It was simply an animal, albeit an extraordinarily large and powerful one. Understanding the real Megalodon, grounded in fossil evidence and ecological principles, is actually more fascinating than any fictional portrayal. The real shark survived for 20 million years, adapting to changing conditions, evolving alongside its prey, and maintaining populations across global oceans. This achievement is far more impressive than any imagined scenario of monster sharks attacking ships or submarines. The study of the Megalodon also provides valuable lessons for understanding modern ecosystems and conservation challenges. The factors that drove the Megalodon to extinction, climate change, habitat loss, changes in prey populations, and competition, are the same factors threatening many species today. By understanding how these pressures affected ancient ecosystems, we gain insight into how modern ecosystems might respond to similar challenges. Modern sharks, while far smaller than the Megalodon, face numerous threats. Overfishing, both targeted and as bycatch, has dramatically reduced populations of many species. Habitat destruction affects coastal species that depend on specific environments for breeding and nursery areas. Climate change is altering ocean temperatures and chemistry, affecting the distribution of both sharks and their prey. Pollution introduces toxins that accumulate in apex predators, affecting their health and reproduction. Some shark species have already been driven to the brink of extinction or beyond. The small-toothed sawfish, once common along the Atlantic coast, is now critically endangered. The angel shark, once abundant in European waters, has disappeared from much of its former range. Many species of rays, close relatives of sharks, face similar threats. These modern extinctions occur on timescales of decades rather than the hundreds of thousands of years over which the Megalodon declined, driven by human activities rather than natural environmental change. The loss of sharks from modern ecosystems has documented ecological consequences. In areas where shark populations have been severely reduced, the populations of their prey have increased dramatically. These prey species then overconsume their own food sources, creating cascading effects through the entire ecosystem. Coral reefs where sharks have been removed show different species composition and reduced health compared to reefs where shark populations remain intact. Seagrass beds and kelp forests show similar patterns, with the effects of shark removal rippling through the entire community. These observations validate the principle that apex predators play crucial roles in ecosystem structure and function, roles disproportionate to their numbers. While sharks represent a small fraction of the total biomass in any ecosystem, their influence extends throughout the food web. Their removal fundamentally alters the ecosystem in ways that can be difficult or impossible to reverse. Conservation efforts for sharks face significant challenges. Sharks are particularly vulnerable to overfishing because they share life history characteristics with the megalodon: slow growth, late maturation, long gestation periods, and small numbers of offspring. These characteristics evolved in environments where adult sharks faced little natural mortality, but they leave modern sharks poorly equipped to withstand intensive fishing pressure. A shark population can be reduced to unsustainable levels in just a few years of heavy fishing, but recovery takes decades or longer. International cooperation is essential for shark conservation because many species migrate across national boundaries, moving between the territorial waters of multiple countries and spending time in international waters where no single nation has jurisdiction. Conservation measures implemented in one country accomplish little if sharks are then caught in the waters of neighboring countries that lack protection. This requires treaties, agreements, and coordinated management across political boundaries, a challenging task given competing economic interests and different cultural attitudes toward sharks and ocean resources. Public perception also affects shark conservation. Sharks have been portrayed as mindless killing machines in popular media, creating fear and hostility that undermines conservation efforts. When people view sharks as dangerous monsters rather than ecologically important animals, they're less likely to support protection measures and more likely to accept or even encourage their removal from ecosystems. Education and outreach efforts that present accurate information about shark biology, behavior, and ecological importance are essential for changing these perceptions. The Megalodon story provides a powerful tool for this education. By presenting the Megalodon as a real animal that lived, hunted, reproduced, and eventually went extinct in response to environmental change, we can help people understand sharks as products of evolution rather than movie monsters. The Megalodon's extinction demonstrates that even the most successful predators are vulnerable to environmental change, a lesson with obvious relevance to modern conservation challenges. Research into the Megalodon continues to produce new insights. Advanced imaging techniques allow scientists to extract more information from fossils than ever before. Computer modeling enables reconstruction of the shark's swimming mechanics, bite force, and energetics. Geochemical analysis of teeth provides information about diet, habitat use, and body temperature. Each new study refines our understanding of this remarkable creature. Recent research has focused on reconstructing the Megalodon's growth rates and life history. By examining growth bands in vertebrae, similar to counting tree rings, scientists can estimate how fast young sharks grew and how long they lived. These studies suggest Megalodon grew rapidly during their first years, adding several feet in length annually, then slowed as they approached maturity. The oldest individuals show growth bands suggesting ages of 50 years or more, though uncertainty in the methodology means maximum lifespans could have been considerably longer. Other research has examined the geographic and temporal distribution of Megalodon fossils in unprecedented detail. By compiling databases of thousands of specimens from museums and private collections worldwide, scientists can map the shark's distribution over time and identify patterns in its range changes. These studies have confirmed that the Megalodon's range contracted toward the equator during the Pliocene, consistent with the hypothesis that cooling temperatures contributed to its extinction. Geochemical studies have provided fascinating insights into the Megalodon's biology. The ratio of different oxygen isotopes in tooth enamel provides information about the water temperature in which the shark lived. Analyses show that Megalodon teeth have isotope ratios indicating warmer temperatures than the surrounding water, confirming that the shark was warm-blooded. The degree of elevation above ambient temperature suggests a metabolic rate intermediate between typical sharks and fully endothermic animals like mammals. Carbon and nitrogen isotope ratios provide information about diet and position in the food web. These analyses confirm that Megalodon occupied the highest trophic level in its ecosystems, feeding on prey that themselves fed on other predators. The isotope signatures also show changes over time, suggesting shifts in diet or feeding areas as environmental conditions changed. Biomechanical modeling has allowed reconstruction of the megalodon's swimming performance and hunting behavior. By creating three-dimensional computer models based on fossil remains and scaling up from modern sharks, researchers can simulate how the shark moved through water and calculate the energy costs of different swimming speeds and hunting strategies. These models suggest the megalodon was not a particularly fast swimmer compared to smaller sharks, with maximum speeds probably around 25 miles per hour for short bursts, but it was extremely efficient at cruising speeds, capable of traveling long distances with minimal energy expenditure. The models also allow testing of different hunting scenarios. Simulations of attacks on whale-sized prey show that the megalodon's optimal strategy was probably a swift vertical approach from below, striking the prey's midsection or tail to cause massive bleeding and debilitating injury. This matches the evidence from fossil whale bones, which show bite marks concentrated on the body and tail regions. Alternative strategies, such as attacking the head, prove less effective in simulations and are less commonly seen in the fossil record. Ongoing fossil discoveries continue to expand our knowledge. New sites preserving megalodon remains are discovered regularly, each potentially providing information unavailable from previously known locations. Areas that have yielded particularly important specimens include the southeastern United States, where extensive Miocene and Pliocene marine deposits are exposed, Peru and Chile, where upwelling zones supported rich marine communities, and various islands in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, where oceanic deposits preserve evidence of open ocean ecosystems. Occasionally, exceptionally well-preserved specimens are discovered, providing glimpses of soft tissue structure or associated fauna that illuminate the megalodon's ecology. While complete megalodon skeletons are impossible due to the cartilaginous nature of the skeleton, associated vertebrae can provide information about body proportions and size. Coprolites, fossilized feces, occasionally preserve remains of the shark's last meals, offering direct evidence of diet. Vomit deposits called regurgitolites have been hypothesized for some fossil accumulations, potentially representing indigestible parts of prey that the shark expelled. The search for megalodon fossils has also led to important paleontological discoveries beyond the shark itself. Sites that preserve megalodon remains often contain rich assemblages of other marine life, providing windows into entire ancient ecosystems. By studying these assemblages, paleontologists can reconstruct the communities in which the megalodon lived, understanding not just the predator but the entire ecological context. One particularly informative type of fossil site is the bone bed, where remains of multiple individuals and species accumulate in concentrated deposits. These can form in various ways: mass mortality events where many animals died simultaneously, accumulation sites where currents concentrated bones over time, or predator feeding areas where kills accumulated. Bone beds that include megalodon teeth alongside remains of whales, seals, and other prey provide direct evidence of ancient food webs and predator-prey relationships. Another valuable source of information is trace fossils, evidence of ancient animal behavior preserved in stone. Bite marks on bones are the most obvious example, but other traces can include burrows, tracks, and other evidence of activity. In the case of the megalodon, bite marks on whale bones are particularly informative, showing where and how the shark attacked, the size of the attacking individual based on tooth spacing, and whether the prey survived the initial attack. Some whale bones show evidence of healing around bite marks, indicating the animal survived the megalodon attack. These specimens demonstrate that not every attack was successful, and that prey animals had defenses and strategies for survival. The location of healed bite marks can indicate which parts of the body prey protected most carefully or which attacks were most survivable. Conversely, bones showing multiple overlapping bite marks suggest feeding on carcasses, either killed by the megalodon or scavenged after death from other causes. The fossil record also preserves evidence of other ancient sharks that provide context for understanding the megalodon's place in shark evolution. The megalodon belongs to the family Odontodontidae, a group that first appeared during the Paleocene, shortly after the extinction of the dinosaurs. Early odontodontids were smaller than the megalodon, but shared the characteristic broad, triangular teeth with serrated edges. The evolutionary history of this family shows a trend toward increasing size. The earliest species, Odotus obliquus, reached lengths of approximately 30 feet, already making it one of the larger sharks of its time. Later species grew progressively larger. Carcharocles auriculatus reached 40 feet, Carcharocles angustidens approached 45 feet, and finally Carcharocles megalodon reached the 60-foot average that makes it famous. This trend toward gigantism occurred alongside the diversification and increasing size of whales, supporting the hypothesis that an evolutionary arms race was occurring. As whales grew larger, there was selection pressure for larger sharks capable of preying on them. This drove shark body size upward, which in turn selected for larger and faster whales, creating a feedback loop that pushed both groups toward extreme sizes. The megalodon's extinction ended this particular evolutionary trajectory, but the broader family continued for a time. Some researchers classify the largest individuals as a separate species, Carcharocles megalodon, with smaller forms representing earlier species or subspecies. The exact taxonomic relationships within the group remain debated, with ongoing research seeking to clarify how different forms relate to each other and whether observed variation represents different species or variation within a single species. Understanding these evolutionary relationships has implications beyond academic classification. It helps us understand how the megalodon acquired its impressive characteristics and how long it took for such extreme specialization to evolve. The fossil record shows that the transition from 30-foot ancestors to 60-foot descendants took approximately 15 million years, suggesting that evolution of extreme size is a gradual process requiring sustained directional selection over vast timescales. The study of the megalodon also intersects with broader questions about the evolution of gigantism in various lineages. Extremely large body size has evolved repeatedly in different groups. Dinosaurs, marine reptiles, whales, and various other lineages have all produced gigantic forms. Understanding what conditions favor the evolution of gigantism and what constraints limit it helps explain patterns of diversity across the tree of life. Several factors appear to favor gigantism in marine predators specifically. Ocean's buoyancy reduces the structural challenges of supporting enormous weight, making large size more achievable than on land. The three-dimensional nature of the marine environment allows large predators to access prey throughout the water column, not just along a two-dimensional surface. The high productivity of some marine ecosystems provides sufficient food to support energy-intensive large predators, and the evolution of large prey creates opportunities for predators specialized to exploit them. However, gigantism also imposes costs. Large animals require more total food, even if their weight-specific metabolic rates are lower than small animals. They take longer to reach maturity, reducing reproductive rate and slowing adaptation to environmental change. They typically produce fewer offspring, making populations more vulnerable to decline. And they're more vulnerable to extinction during environmental perturbations because their specialized adaptations may be poorly suited to changed conditions. The megalodon's extinction illustrates these vulnerabilities. Its extreme size, which had been advantageous for millions of years, became a liability when environmental conditions changed. The shark's energy requirements couldn't be met in a changing ocean where prey was scarcer and more difficult to catch. Its slow reproductive rate meant populations couldn't recover from declines. Its specialization on large prey left it without alternatives when those prey populations were affected by the same environmental changes. Modern ecosystems show similar patterns. The largest species in any ecosystem are typically the most vulnerable to extinction. This is true across environments: elephants, rhinos, and large carnivores on land, whales and large sharks in the ocean, large flightless birds and raptors in the air. Conservation efforts must account for the special vulnerabilities of large species, providing protection not just for the animals themselves, but for the extensive habitats and resources they require. The megalodon story also raises questions about the future evolution of marine ecosystems. If current trends of warming temperatures, ocean acidification, and species extinctions continue, what will the oceans of the future look like? Will new apex predators evolve to fill roles currently occupied by species threatened with extinction? Or will ecosystems reorganize in fundamentally different ways, with different structures and dynamics than those we know today? Evolutionary theory suggests that empty ecological niches will eventually be filled, but the timescales involved are vast. After previous mass extinctions, recovery of ecosystem complexity took millions of years. The evolution of new large predators to replace extinct forms similarly occurred over millions of years. If human activities drive modern apex predators to extinction, the timescale for evolutionary replacement would extend far beyond human civilization. Moreover, the modern ocean faces stressors unprecedented in Earth's history. The current rate of climate change appears to exceed anything in the fossil record, except during impact events like the asteroid strike that ended the Cretaceous. Ocean acidification from dissolved carbon dioxide is occurring faster than during previous acidification events in Earth's history. The combination of multiple simultaneous stressors, warming, acidification, pollution, overfishing, habitat destruction, creates challenges that no previous ecosystems have faced. Under these conditions, the assumption that ecosystems will recover and reorganize may be overly optimistic. We may be entering a period of permanent simplification of ocean ecosystems, with reduced diversity, disrupted food webs, and the loss of complex structures like coral reefs that support rich communities. The Megalodon's world of diverse, abundant marine life may represent a state that, once lost, cannot be recovered on any timescale relevant to human civilization. This makes the study of ancient ecosystems, including those dominated by the Megalodon, all the more important. By understanding how ecosystems function when intact and complex, we establish baselines for what we've lost and what we're at risk of losing. The Megalodon's world wasn't pristine. Predation, death, and extinction were constants, but it was characterized by remarkable diversity and complexity built over millions of years of evolution. Fossils from this era show ecosystems far richer than those of today in many respects. Dozens of whale species occupied different niches. Modern oceans support far fewer. Coastal areas supported diverse communities of marine mammals, sea turtles, and sharks. Modern coastlines are often dominated by a few generalist species. The three-dimensional structure of ecosystems, from surface to seafloor, was more complex, with specialist species at different depths and in different habitats. The Jurassic coast of England provides another window into ancient marine ecosystems, though from an earlier period than the Megalodon's reign. This stretch of coastline exposes rocks spanning the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods, preserving fossils of the marine reptiles that dominated Mesozoic seas before the evolution of large predatory sharks and whales. Discoveries from these deposits illustrate the long history of life in the oceans and the many different forms that marine predators have taken. The ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and pliosaurs found along the Jurassic coast demonstrate evolutionary solutions to marine life that differ fundamentally from those seen in sharks or whales. These reptiles never evolved the hydrodynamic perfection of sharks or the sophisticated echolocation of whales, but they were nonetheless successful predators for over 150 million years. Their eventual extinction at the end of the Cretaceous opened ecological opportunities that mammals and sharks exploited, leading eventually to the world the Megalodon inhabited. Similarly, the Sahara Desert, seemingly the least likely place to find marine fossils, preserves extensive deposits from when the region was covered by tropical seas. Miocene deposits from the Sahara include megalodon teeth, whale bones, and remains of diverse marine communities. These fossils illustrate how dramatically Earth's geography has changed. Areas that are now among the driest places on Earth were once warm, productive oceans teeming with life. These Saharan fossils also provide evidence of marine ecosystems in regions that are now inaccessible to paleontologists due to ongoing political instability, conflict, or simply lack of infrastructure. In some cases, fossils collected decades ago represent the only scientific samples from certain formations, as modern expeditions cannot access the areas where they were found. This highlights the importance of museum collections in preserving information about ancient life and the need to protect these collections for future research. Technological advances continue to provide new tools for studying the Megalodon and its world. Computed tomography scanning allows non-destructive examination of fossil internal structure, revealing details invisible to traditional preparation techniques. Synchrotron scanning provides even higher resolution, showing microscopic features of tooth structure and bone composition. These techniques have revealed growth patterns in teeth, information about diet and physiology from trace element composition, and details of wear patterns that indicate how teeth function during feeding. Molecular paleontology, the extraction and analysis of ancient proteins and DNA, has revolutionized the study of recent fossils. While the Megalodon is far too old for DNA preservation, ancient proteins can potentially survive for millions of years under favorable conditions. Future research may succeed in extracting protein sequences from megalodon teeth, providing information about the shark's evolutionary relationships and physiology that's impossible to obtain from morphology alone. Isotope geochemistry continues to provide increasingly sophisticated information about ancient environments and animal physiology. New isotope systems are being developed that can reveal information about migration patterns, seasonal behavior, and even stress levels in ancient animals. Applied to megalodon teeth, which grew continuously throughout the shark's life and may preserve seasonal or annual records of changing conditions, these techniques could provide unprecedented insight into how individual sharks lived and how they responded to environmental variation. Computer modeling and simulation allow testing of hypotheses about behavior, physiology, and ecology that cannot be directly observed. Finite element analysis can simulate the stress distribution in teeth during biting, revealing how tooth shape relates to function. Computational fluid dynamics can model water flow around reconstructed bodies, testing hypotheses about swimming performance. Agent-based models can simulate population dynamics and extinction scenarios, helping us understand what combination of factors could drive a successful species to extinction. Each of these techniques, and others still in development, promises to deepen our understanding of the megalodon. The shark has been known to science for nearly 2 centuries, yet major questions remain unanswered. How precisely did the species hunt different types of prey? How did juveniles avoid cannibalism from adults? Did megalodon exhibit any social behavior, or were they strictly solitary like most modern sharks? What were the critical factors that finally drove the species to extinction? Future discoveries will undoubtedly answer some of these questions while raising new ones. Each new fossil find has the potential to overturn previous assumptions or confirm long-standing hypotheses. A complete or near-complete skeleton, while unlikely given the cartilaginous nature of shark skeletons, would revolutionize our understanding of the animal's anatomy and proportions. Discovery of a preserved nursery area with numerous juvenile remains could provide unprecedented information about early life history. Fossil evidence of predator-prey interactions, such as megalodon teeth embedded in whale bones, continue to illuminate hunting behavior. The megalodon also serves as a gateway to broader interest in paleontology, ocean science, and natural history. The shark's combination of enormous size, predatory habits, and mysterious extinction captures public imagination in ways few fossils can match. This interest can be leveraged for education, introducing people to scientific concepts and methods while satisfying curiosity about an impressive ancient animal. Museums worldwide feature megalodon exhibits, often including jaw reconstructions that allow visitors to stand inside the gape of the massive predator. These exhibits provide visceral understanding of the shark's size in ways that numbers and measurements cannot convey. They also provide opportunities to explain concepts like evolution, extinction, ecology, and geological time in accessible ways, using the megalodon as a focal point for broader learning. Educational programs built around the megalodon can teach scientific methods by showing how paleontologists reconstruct ancient animals from fragmentary evidence. They can illustrate evolution by showing the megalodon's place in shark evolutionary history. They can explain ecology by discussing the shark's role in ancient food webs, and they can address conservation by drawing parallels between the factors that drove the megalodon to extinction and threats facing modern sharks. The megalodon has also inspired significant citizen science efforts. Amateur fossil collectors have discovered numerous important specimens, including some of the largest and best preserved teeth known. These enthusiasts donate or sell specimens to museums and researchers, contributing to scientific knowledge while pursuing their hobby. Online communities of collectors share information about fossil localities, identification techniques, and preparation methods, creating informal networks that complement academic research. However, the commercial fossil trade also raises ethical concerns. Megalodon teeth are valuable, with large, high-quality specimens selling for thousands of dollars. This creates incentive for both legal collecting and illegal looting of fossil sites. Commercially valuable fossils may be sold to private collectors rather than donated to museums, removing them from scientific study. Sites of particular scientific importance can be damaged by careless or excessive collecting. Balancing public interest, commercial collecting, and scientific research requires thoughtful policy and regulation. Some localities are protected, with collecting prohibited or strictly regulated. Others allow collecting with certain restrictions, such as limits on quantities or requirements to report significant fines. Effective policy requires input from paleontologists, collectors, land managers, and the public to create rules that protect important resources while allowing appropriate access. The digital age has also transformed how information about the megalodon reaches the public. Online videos, podcasts, and articles provide unprecedented access to information about the shark, though quality varies widely. Some sources present accurate, science-based information created by or in consultation with experts. Others present speculation, exaggeration, or outright misinformation, sometimes deliberately blurring the line between fact and fiction for entertainment value. Media literacy becomes crucial in this environment. Understanding how to evaluate sources, recognize expertise, and distinguish evidence-based conclusions from speculation is essential for making sense of the flood of information available online. Educational efforts must include not just information about the megalodon itself, but also guidance on how to critically evaluate claims and seek out reliable sources. Despite these challenges, the overall impact of public interest in the megalodon has been positive for science. The shark attracts attention and funding to paleontological research. It inspires new generations of scientists who first became interested in natural history through fascination with this impressive predator. It provides opportunities to communicate scientific concepts to broad audiences, and it reminds us that Earth's history includes wonders as impressive as anything in fiction. The megalodon's legacy extends beyond its biological and ecological significance. The shark has become a cultural icon, representing the power of nature, the mystery of deep time, and the reality of extinction. In an era when many people feel disconnected from nature, the megalodon provides a connection to the wild, even if that connection is to an animal extinct for millions of years. This cultural significance has value beyond entertainment or education. It reflects and shapes how we think about predators, extinction, and our relationship with the natural world. The megalodon embodies the concept of the apex predator in its most extreme form, a specialized killer, perfectly adapted for its ecological role, dominant in its environment for millions of years. Its eventual extinction despite this success illustrates that no adaptation, no matter how perfect for current conditions, guarantees survival when conditions change. This lesson resonates in the modern world, where environmental change is occurring at unprecedented rates and species are going extinct faster than at any time since the extinction of the dinosaurs. If the megalodon, successful for 20 million years and supremely adapted to its environment, could be driven to extinction by environmental change, what does this tell us about the vulnerability of modern species to current changes? The answer is sobering. Species that have existed for millions of years can disappear in geological instants when conditions change sufficiently. Adaptations that were advantageous become liabilities. Ecological relationships that supported stability become sources of vulnerability. The complexity built over evolutionary time can unravel rapidly when stressed beyond certain thresholds. Yet the megalodon's story also demonstrates resilience. The shark persisted through significant environmental changes during its 20-million-year tenure. It adapted to shifting prey communities, changing ocean conditions, and competition from other predators. It spread globally, occupying diverse habitats from tropical coasts to temperate open ocean. Only when multiple stressors aligned, climate change, habitat loss, prey population changes, and intensified competition, did the species finally succumb. This resilience offers hope for conservation of modern species. While many face serious threats, timely action can prevent extinction. Protected areas can preserve critical habitats. Fishing regulations can allow overharvested populations to recover. International cooperation can address threats that cross national boundaries. Climate change mitigation can slow the rate of environmental change, providing time for adaptation. The megalodon cannot be saved. It has been extinct for millions of years, but its living relatives, the sharks and rays that inhabit modern oceans, can be protected. These species fill ecological roles similar to those the megalodon once occupied. They structure ecosystems, control prey populations, and contribute to the complex web of interactions that characterize healthy marine environments. Their conservation ensures that oceans retain some measure of the complexity and diversity that characterize the megalodon's world. As we conclude this exploration of the megalodon, we're left with a portrait of an extraordinary animal that dominated Earth's oceans for an immense span of time. The megalodon was the largest predatory shark ever to live, a warm-blooded hunter capable of taking down the largest prey in its environment. It possessed the most powerful bite force of any animal known to science and employed sophisticated hunting strategies refined over millions of years of evolution. The shark's success was built on specialization: massive size to overpower large prey, powerful jaws and teeth to inflict devastating wounds, warm-blooded physiology to sustain hunting effort, and keen senses to locate prey across vast distances. These same specializations, advantageous for millions of years, ultimately contributed to the species' extinction when environmental conditions changed beyond its capacity to adapt. The world the Megalodon inhabited was richer and more diverse than our modern oceans in many ways. Whales existed in greater variety, filling niches from surface filter feeders to deep-diving predators. Marine mammals populated every coastal environment, providing abundant prey for predators. The ocean's productivity supported food webs of remarkable complexity, from microscopic plankton to the largest animals ever to live. This world changed during the late Pliocene and early Pleistocene. Cooling temperatures contracted warm water toward the equator. Falling sea levels reduced coastal habitats. Ice sheets locked up water, changing ocean chemistry and circulation. Prey populations adapted to new conditions, becoming faster, more widely distributed, or more difficult to catch. Competitors evolved new strategies and capabilities. The Megalodon, constrained by its biology and ecological requirements, could not adapt quickly enough to these changes. Its range contracted, populations declined, and eventually the last individual died. The species that had ruled Earth's oceans for 20 million years disappeared, leaving only fossilized teeth as evidence of its existence. Yet through these fossils and through the scientific study of ancient ecosystems, the Megalodon lives on in human knowledge and imagination. We can reconstruct its anatomy, understand its ecology, and appreciate its significance in Earth's history. We can learn lessons from its extinction and apply them to conservation of modern species. And we can marvel at the fact that evolution could produce something so magnificent, so perfectly suited to its time and place. The Megalodon represents both the power of evolution to create remarkable adaptations and the inevitability of extinction when conditions change. It demonstrates that success, no matter how complete, is always temporary on geological timescales. It shows that apex predators, despite their position at the top of food webs, are ultimately dependent on the complex ecosystems that support them. As we face our own era of environmental change, the Megalodon's story takes on additional relevance. The factors that drove this apex predator to extinction, climate change, habitat loss, ecosystem disruption, are operating today at unprecedented rates. The species we share the planet with face challenges comparable to those that eliminated the Megalodon, but occurring over decades and centuries rather than hundreds of thousands of years. Will we learn from the past? Will we act to preserve the complex, diverse ecosystems that remain? Or will future scientists, studying the fossils of our era, puzzle over the extinction of species that seemed so successful, so well adapted, trying to understand what combination of factors could have driven them to disappear? The Megalodon cannot answer these questions. It existed, it thrived, it went extinct. Its story is written in stone, in the teeth scattered across ancient seabeds now raised into mountains and deserts. But by studying that story, by understanding what happened and why, we equip ourselves to write a different ending for modern species, for modern ecosystems, and ultimately for ourselves. The largest predatory shark that ever lived is gone, and it will never return. The oceans it ruled have changed beyond recognition, but in its absence, it teaches us about evolution, ecology, and extinction. It shows us both the heights that life can reach and the vulnerability inherent in even the most successful species. It reminds us that we share a planet with an incredible diversity of life, built over billions of years of evolution, and that this diversity is not guaranteed to persist without our stewardship. The Megalodon's reign is over, but its lessons endure. In the teeth preserved in museums and private collections, in the bite marks on ancient whale bones, in the scientific papers analyzing its biology and ecology, the shark continues to teach us about the natural world and our place in it. This is the true legacy of Carcharocles Megalodon, not a monster from our nightmares, but a magnificent animal from Earth's deep past, worthy of our study, our respect, and our wonder.